Hustle, your virtual sci-fi fantasy writers group. I'm Anton.
I'm AP.
And I'm Chris.
And today we have two special guests. We have Cody Sisco and Allison Rose. Welcome to the Genre Hustle.
Hi.
Thanks for having us.
Happy to be here. By, guys.
Cody, we'll start with you. Give us a little bit of your background.
Well, I came to writing, 2012 after a sort of decade-long career in consulting on sort of environmental and social justice issues for companies, corporate responsibility. And at that point, I was starting to think like, wow, if I die right now, would I have not reached my dream of writing a story or writing a novel? So that's, that can be a motivating factor.
Yeah, dying.
Yeah. And then from that point on, I started work on a science fiction series. I started reaching out to other authors in LA and trying to, become part of the community, which it is challenging if you don't know where to start or what to do. And it took years for me to kind of figure that out. But around the time my first novel came out, that was when Allison and I met, and that's when we started to collaborate. I grew up in Northern California, in the Bay Area.
Where?
East Bay.
Oh, I grew up in Brooklyn. I grew up in Albany, if that means anything to you.
I do, yeah. Yeah, I'm headed up there in 2 weeks to see family. But, the way I think about my childhood was it was fairly idyllic, and that's the thing I wanted to get away from. And that's, I think, where my love of supernatural stories and horror and science fiction came from, is I wanted to be in a different world than I was.
Anywhere but Pleasanton.
Pleasant Hill.
Oh, yeah. Pleasant Hill. Oh, that's all right.
It's fine.
Isn't that Walnut Creek area? Right?
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, it is. It's the suburbs. No, it's the suburbs. It's like the nice suburbs.
But it's we're going to talk more about LA later, but it is more of a blank canvas there than in many places.
Emphasis on the blank.
Well, and how about you, Allison?
I actually am born and raised in LA area.
That's rare.
I grew up in San Gabriel Valley, the other valley, Monrovia.
All right.
So that's LA adjacent. So it was a nice suburban town to grow up. Very quiet, but my mom worked in downtown, so I was always around Los Angeles, and I was pretty well influenced by it. And my dad is a writer, and he's been trying to. He spent his whole life trying to write books.
A fiction writer?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Screenplays, books, he unfortunately had to raise 2 children, so he didn't get the chance to do that until he retired, until he got the kids out of the house. But so I grew up in a household full of screenplays and books everywhere. And when I was in high school, actually, I wanted to be a television writer. And so that's kind of where I started. I wanted to write stories for television. And then life happened. The trajectory kind of went this way and that way. And then I want to say maybe 5-6 years ago, I was inspired to start writing novels. And I actually wrote a fantasy novel first,
cool.
A historical fantasy. And it's sitting in a drawer somewhere.
What was it called?
Well, maybe we'll get back into it. It's called Victoria Heart. Maybe one of these days it'll come out. But I had envisioned it being... like a 7-book series.
Oh, yeah. That's always good to start small.
You guys stop laughing. I'm right here.
Yes. Cody's got 6, 7, hopefully
around there.
That's right.
And then I ended up writing the first in my sci-fi series, which was supposed to be a standalone. And then people told me, no, you should make it a 3-book series. And regretting shooting myself in the foot there. But
book one is pretty epic.
Yeah, I know. It is kind of hard to live up to those kinds of expectations. So writing the second and third book are challenging. But
that's what you get for listening to people.
Yeah. That's your first mistake right there.
Should have just left it as it was.
We're going to talk about Made in LA, which is an anthology that you two put out. How often does it come out? Which ones have come out? Is this the first one's third one?
This is it. We just released the second one.
That's the one number I didn't get.
And it's annual.
It is annual.
And we usually time it to coincide. Well, we want to get the books printed so we can bring them with us to the Festival of Books and debut the book there.
Yes.
That's right. And the Festival of Books is May?
It's mid-April.
April, okay. Yeah. I'm not getting anything right this morning. I'm completely off so far.
This is the beauty of calendars.
This is just like every other day, yeah. And that seems like a very smart strategy. Right.
Well, it seems smart, but maybe we stumbled into brilliance.
Yes, okay, deadlines are not good for authors.
Really? Okay. Well, before we get this, let's start with the beginning. So how did this come about? Where did you guys how did you meet? How did this idea
Tell us your
form?
origin story.
Yeah, your origin story. Yeah.
The Made in LA origin story. Cody and I met we are both independent authors. We have started our own sci-fi series handful of years ago. Feels like forever ago now. And we met up at the Indie Author Day in Alhambra in 2016. And didn't know anybody. Both of us were like orphan childs just wandering around. I don't know anybody, but I'm going to try and connect with people.
It's like first day of first grade, right?
It is.
Exactly, yeah.
Who am I going to make new friends
Who's my
with?
friend?
Yeah.
Had you done an event before then?
That was my first.
That was
That's
my
why
first
I was-
too.
And what is the Independent Author Day?
Oh, so it's an annual. It started by Biblioboard, and it's an annual celebration of indie authors. And they in particular like to have events at libraries throughout the country. So, in every state there'll be dozens of gatherings of independent authors, and typically it's a little more craft focused. So people can learn how to publish their own work.
Right.
Yeah.
And the marketing involved and all of the things that go behind it, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you guys were walking around, you bumped into each other, and this light went up, and you're like, I found my missing piece.
No, it was actually more special than that. I ran into him later on, and he recognized me. We were at a random coffee shop, and and he was like, I remember you. You were at that Indie Author Day. And he said, hey, I have this booth at the LA Times Festival of Books this year or next year. Do you want to come join me in this booth? And,
cool.
Of course, that's just so cool because I've been, a spectator at the LA Times Festival of Books and always wanted to be one of those authors in the booth. And so, of course, I jumped in on that. I don't even know how you decided to get in on that.
I was so excited after Indie Author Day, and because I had a little table, I had my books, I had like some materials printed. It was just very exciting to me that I jumped into the Festival of Books, not really thinking it through. And then
You're like, oh wait, I can get a booth? Oh yes.
yeah, exactly. And then I'm terrified of the risk I just took. So I wanted to find other authors who had one or two books out to come with me and make me not feel terrified by all those people.
Well, Cody was really impressive when I met him. He had these huge posters. I'm like, wow, he's so much more advanced than I am. Wow, this is really cool. Of course, I want to jump in on that.
It's a half step ahead.
I was going to say,
that's not a full step.
That's how I always say. It was like we're only like one chapter ahead of everyone else, right?
Yeah. We both only had one book out also.
Yeah.
But we collected two more authors to join us
At the Festival
at
of
the
Books.
Festival of Books.
Yeah. And so we just had our own titles. And at that point, I think my second had just come out. Yours was still forthcoming. So there were not a lot of books on this table.
Well, there were a lot of books. There just wasn't many. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Not many titles.
Yeah. But it's interesting because people would come up to us and, we're both science fiction nerds. And so we connected with that audience. But then other people would come up too and be like, what are you guys doing here? And we had a range of genre at the time between the four of us. So that was good because we got to see what people were interested in.
Yeah.
So when did Made in LA sort of start? Like how did it
What was the genesis?
Haphazardly.
haphazardly?
We had a banner for our booth, and we spitballed what that title would be.
Yeah,
Because
with
we
local
didn't-
authors.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
And we didn't want to make it seem like, because people get really weirded out, like, ooh, indie authors.
Totally.
That just means you're on Amazon. And
Right.
you can't get a publisher to publish your stuff. So we collectively decided on Made in LA because that was the most inclusive title we could come up with for these four different really broad group of authors. So then we were at the booth and people would come up, see our title and say, oh, Made in LA. You must have stories about LA.
They're pretty smart at the Festival of Books, aren't they?
And I'm the only one that my series does take place in LA. But other than that, mine is the only one that has anything to do with LA specifically. And so that's when Cody and I had this light bulb moment. We were sitting there going, we need to tap into this.
Yeah.
And so as soon as we started getting this interest in people wanting to have stories about LA, local people too,
Right.
wanting to have stories about LA, we decided to let's just make a book, have people submits stories about LA, and that's how it all started.
Yeah, and that was at least, almost 6 months later. Like, we didn't get started very early that year at all.
But you stayed in touch, obviously, after the Festival of Books, and but you guys are not in the same writing group.
No. And I've been to like a bunch of different ones over the past like 5 years, just testing them out, seeing what's helpful for my craft. And I think what I needed from this group was after the fact. Like, once the book is written, once it's out there, what do we do?
Right.
And that's I think where we all gelled.
And so how do you go from this idea of, okay, there's a demand for these types of stories to putting it together and coming out with that first anthology?
A lot of hair pulling out.
Pain and suffering.
You had never done anything like this, right? Neither one of you had done an anthology with open submissions and other authors or anything, right?
Yeah. And we did open the call for submissions that first year, but not a lot came through. So most of the stories was sort of like one-on-one, us inviting authors to submit their stuff. It was much more of a pull, or if it was a referral even. But I think as we've grown, as our reach has extended a bit more, we're getting more and more submissions every year. And
Now we're cool.
Yeah, right. No, now you're a thing. Yeah, that's exactly it, right?
First year, not so much.
Yeah, no,
You're like, what are you doing with this? Where is it going to take me? A lot of there was
Yeah,
a
what
lot
are you
of
going to do for me,
hesitance.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot
You're
of
not
people
paying me.
Yeah.
Exactly. They get some copies of the book, but a lot of people want to see it first. They want to know what it is before they're going to sign on, because it could be vapor, right?
Right.
Sure.
And you have the advantage now that you can show people and like, oh no, look, we've done this thing. We've been, we've toured the bookstores of LA. Like, we're a real thing.
Yeah, I think good part of it's proving our own existence to ourselves.
Yes. I still don't believe it.
I'm bought in for now.
I'm in my own fantasy world and have been for years.
That's right. But play as if, right?
But so we went back to the LA Times Festival of Books. Then was our second year with this printed anthology book.
Okay.
And filled the table with all of these copies, and we sold out of all of
Really?
our
Wow,
copies.
that's awesome.
We had people, scrounge. We had our own personal copies we were throwing on the table, just sell them.
That's amazing.
amazing,
yeah.
Does that happen often at the Festival of Books?
It didn't happen to us the first year by any means.
I think a lot of the booksellers there have been doing this for a long time, so they know like which titles are going to sell because they've been selling in the stores. Like, we're such a small niche microcosm of publishing that I don't think there's a lot of track record for us to like learn from.
But it goes back to what you were saying, where people were coming up to you and saying, "Oh, Made in LA, what is that?" And then you like you said, the light bulb moment where you see, "Oh, hey, maybe there's a need for this," and then you go back the next year and you're like, "Oh, look, there is. Look, people want to buy our book."
Yeah,
It worked.
That wasn't a certainty in advance.
No,
but when we found that out, that was like, okay, we don't need to be quite so nervous about this.
Right.
And now you have a second anthology, which I have here, and it looks amazing.
Yeah.
It's really great. And
Allison designed the cover
right? Yeah.
for Volume 1 and Volume 2.
looks fantastic. And AP and I, we saw your event at Skylight Books, which is our local bookstore here in Los Feliz. And what a great community you guys are building. It's amazing. We showed up and we were like, oh my God, we need to meet these guys. We need to get them on the podcast, and we need to suck all their knowledge out and use it. Take us a little bit through what you're looking for in the submissions and what you like, and how does that go about? How do you do that?
On the technical side, we don't have length limits, and we accept all genres of fiction. Beyond that, maybe, Allison, what are you looking for when you read a story? Easy question.
Yeah, no pressure.
I don't know. I feel like I tend to be the one in the group who's like, nah, more often than yes. But I think it's mostly because when I look for a story, our expectations are small. It has to do something with Los Angeles.
Sure.
And some of the stories are very light in Los Angeles. There was one story that took place in Fresno, I think, in the first anthology.
Are they considering that Los Angeles adjacent?
Yes.
That's a stretch, but
Well, for the first one especially, we had to take the best writing pieces we could because our submissions were so much, there weren't as many as Cody said. We were reaching out specifically to authors. This one, however, because now we had a lot of outside writers, there are a vast variety of stories now. So what I look for in a story is, what are you telling me about LA that I don't already know?
Okay.
What is a different perspective that I wouldn't necessarily see? Is Los Angeles playing a part as a character, as an interesting setting? Is there something that really kind of sparks my interest and makes me go, this is why this story, it has to take place in Los Angeles, whereas opposed to New York or Chicago or somewhere in the deep South?
What makes it unique and
Yes. How is LA special to that story? And then also too, we have a lot of submissions that are heavy in thematics of like today's issues, social issues. Some of them can be too on the nose, which I'm not terribly interested in. I like a little bit more nuance in my stories, which is hard to do in a short story.
Sure. Yeah.
Writing is hard. We discuss that all the time. How hard it is to do anything decent. And Cody, what do you look for? Like, what pulls you into a story?
Yeah, I want a chance to see the world a little bit differently. So, it's good that LA shows up strongly in the stories, but I do want to kind of get a sneak perspective that I never would have come up with on my own.
Okay.
But that's like when I'm really thrilled and engaged. Sometimes a story, all it needs to do is entertain me. And for that, what we talked about at our stories reading not too long ago was how, there's two ingredients. One is curiosity and one is empathy. And usually in that order, curiosity will hook me because there's something about the story that I want to know and keep following it to find out. And then the empathy is that the character actually makes you care about what's happening to them.
Okay.
That's not an easy trick to pull off as a writer.
None of this is easy. Yeah. But, sometimes flashy language gets me. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it pushes me away. So, like, if there's a strong voice, that can have different effects.
Yeah.
I may totally gel with it. I may not.
And you'll take any writers, right? They published, unpublished,
Correct.
right?
Yeah. And they can have been previously published. We typically only get like one or two per year that ends up happening. But yeah.
And so out of curiosity, what's the submission process for you guys? How long do you open it up for? Walk us through it a little bit.
Yeah, we've tried to move our production calendar forward so that we have more time and aren't jammed at the very end to get this done by the festival. Sure. We'll continue to try to do that. But typically, we open submissions in the summer. They're open for like a couple months. We'll close it when we have a full book.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, because we get a spattering of them throughout the summer. And then, I think what happened last year is we did get a decent amount, but we had to, unfortunately reject a lot of them. They weren't quite what we were looking for.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we knew we could be a little bit more picky this time around. And so then we still had a bit of a void that we had to fill. So we kind of extended that deadline a lot longer.
Yeah. But across the whole process, I think we got 35 submissions.
Okay.
Wow.
And it's read not just by you two, but there's how many other people?
There's 3 of us who read every story. That's how we did it the first 2 years. And like Allison said, she tends to be the one to be like, no. I'm the one who's like, but we got to fill a book. And I'm like, this is pretty good.
That's a funny negotiation, right?
But it's helpful for me to figure out like, how do I stay in a reader's mindset and rather than the publishing decision maker mindset. I'm easily swayed.
Yeah, how was that for you guys? I mean, that must have been a new experience rejecting stories. I mean, that must have been.
Yeah, the critique group experience is always like, oh, I can get back to you with some suggestions. Here's what I noticed.
Yep.
Right.
And that's not, we look at the submissions and we say, is this ready to go or is it going to take some work? And if it's going to take more than a little bit of work, we probably can't invest the time in that.
Have you had some stories that you've gone back to the author and said, hey, if you can tweak this aspect of it, we'll take it? And has that worked?
Yeah, we have done that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And not everybody's open to that kind of, because it's a quick turnaround. We need this in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And so sometimes they'll just be like,
no,
not really. I don't have time for that. But we are, if we are kind of on the fence of maybe, I like where this is going, but this one aspect or this sort of part of it isn't working for us, then we really want this story, and we'll go back to the author and ask them to
So it really is kind of a case by case and sort of timing and everything works into this. Yeah.
We have a 2/3 majority on all of our stories too.
Oh, really? So if two people feel like if the one person, so nobody gets like a
so
veto.
Tell us, Allison, which stories in the anthology did you not want? No.
Fine. No, I mean most of them are really well written and interesting, and we do have to filter into what we want our anthology to be.
Yeah. Because
So that's really what it
it's
comes down to.
ultimately y'all's voice that has to come through, right? It has to be, because you see the totality of however many stories are going to be in there. You have to see how they all fit together.
Yeah.
And we are responsible for the final product
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that we are pitching, our opinions also in our what we see as good writing and good stories.
And there are, I think in terms of where we veer when we make these decisions, there are other venues for literary fiction, for contemporary fiction. We like genre, I think we like noir, we like sci-fi, we like fantasy, we like all of that because it's such a rich and fertile ground for writers to experiment. So I think that, Volume 1 tended to have more ghost stories than your average anthology. Volume 2 was more like addiction and obsession.
Yeah.
So the themes kind of arise organically out of the stories that make it in. But yeah, that's where you can edit.
And you guys are writing on the side at the same time, right? I mean, so you're always
And working.
full-time jobs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
That's good.
It's grinding.
That's good. Yeah, I'm glad to know that you guys aren't busy.
Right. And it's, so we get these stories and then we are also responsible for polishing them up too, because sometimes, people don't pass through an editor first before they hand it to us. So then we have to do that. And then we have to create the cover, and then we have to do the interior design, and then we have to actually send it out to get printed and, proofed and all this. So
Yeah,
it's a process.
Sounds pretty easy.
Yeah, so easy.
Done in a day.
We've learned
Although
so much.
luckily, both Cody and I have some experience doing this now, because we've done our own.
Because you've done your own books,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
And that part, I wouldn't say it's easy. It's multi-step. It's technical, but it is the quick and easy part relatively to the writing.
Oh,
part.
sure, yeah. Because at that point, you've got a finished product, and then it's just you
Yeah.
step through these boxes, step through
Exactly.
these hoops, and then you get to the end.
Yep.
Yeah. We're just coming off of 6 events, I think, where we had readings and discussions all around town for Volume 2 of the anthology, and now we're going to be focused on going through the submissions, on making sure we're telling writers to send them in.
And where can they send them to?
MadeInLAWriters.com is where that's our website. And so all the submission information is there. You can also, so if we are still open for submissions, it'll say so on the website. And if we are, send them on over. Also, when we are going to be releasing the third one, will be in April for the Festival of Books, LA Times Festival of Books. Our booth is 385 on Child's Way. 835, sorry.
And I will say, one time, I think it was the second year we were there, a gentleman came by with holding, his papers in his hand and shoved them into our hands,
Oh my
saying,
God.
read this.
Yeah.
Oh, literally, here's
We
this
get
is just
that.
my submission process.
Yeah, and that didn't work out.
You think?
We do have a lot of people asking us for help and advice for publishing. They'll say, well, so walk me through the process. And I'm like, there's a
Okay.
line of people behind you. I don't have time for this.
I was gonna say we could do an entire episode just on self-publishing.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
we could do a whole season
Yeah,
on that.
yeah.
probably.
Yeah, but it does happen that a lot of writers come up to us there and want to know, so what's going on here? I saw you online. What's happening?
Because
you saw it. That's what's
and
happening.
and there's a line people immediately, right? I mean, that's got to help, right? People are like, oh,
Yeah.
this is a happening.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think half of it is just doing it, figuring out what you want to do
Yep.
and doing it, and not waiting for an opportunity to present itself, because every step leads to one more other door opening.
Right.
To mix all the metaphors.
And so much more work.
yeah.
That's life.
And
Yeah,
there
you-
goes your weekend for the next 5 years.
It's been a lot.
It's worth it though.
And Twitter, you guys are both on Twitter.
We're on Twitter and
Yeah.
Instagram.
Instagram, Made in LA Writers.
Yeah, Twitter's the same.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so one of the things we like to do is highlight our contributors, because they're the stars of the show. Really, it's their stories. So if you go on our Instagram and on our Twitter, you can see who they are. Not just
Sure.
words on a page, but actually who they are. We've been starting to post some video from our readings so people can hear them too.
Oh, cool.
Oh, that's
'Cause
good.
That's nice to get to know an author's voice, and then when you're reading their story, that comes through a little bit more.
And did they come out for any of the readings at the during the tour when you guys were promoting?
Yeah, I mean, it was a challenge. Some of the events we had 10 of us.
Yeah,
and we
yeah.
had
Like 10 people, like 10 authors you were going to read.
yeah, between
Skylight
authors and
Books.
editors.
Skylight was
There
pretty
was a
pretty
lot.
packed.
Yeah.
So really, we couldn't do a reading at that point. We had more of a discussion, kind of like we're doing now, but it was like on various themes that show up in the.
Can I just say, how exciting was that to go into Skylight Books and see it packed, right?
And with people I've never seen before.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
usually, at least last year, it was, friends and family.
Right,
and they get tired if you ask them to
Right.
show
They're like,
up.
oh, wait, what night is that?
It's kind of like being in a band.
Once. Do I
It's
have
so
to go
hard to
again?
park over there.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
that's real.
That's very true.
Will you come see my bands play?
Yeah, so getting a lot of new people and also just, being in Los Feliz where
Yeah.
there's just people walking in off the street.
And it's an amazing bookstore.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. No, we
Yes.
love
So great.
Skylight.
Yes.
So where, aside from obviously your website, are there other places people can purchase the anthologies if they want to?
It's on Amazon.
On Amazon.
Yeah,
Also,
any bookstore can
ebook.
order it.
Yeah.
Like we do some consignment deals with local bookstores around town,
cool.
but any bookstore that has access to Ingram Sparks portal for ordering books, which is most of them,
Which is everyone, yeah.
they can order it through there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just go in and ask. The Made in LA anthology. And quite a few now bookstores in LA know who we are too,
Yeah.
because we've been there. And so they'll be like, oh, yeah.
Weren't you guys going to the last bookstore?
Yes.
That's amazing.
I know. I mean,
That's huge.
I know. And so it's really cool to now just be expanding so much beyond ourselves that, it's kind of hard to remember.
You're a thing now. This is real.
Now we have to figure out what to do with ourselves too.
Yes, right now, exactly now.
We can't.
Okay,
Now
so
comes the second
I
act.
can show up, but then what?
Yeah.
Cody and I used to just be, a couple of independent authors just floating around being goofy, and now we have to present ourselves in this
Right. No,
professional manner.
now
and
you're responsible
speak
people.
with authority. I don't really, it's a big transition. But it's
tough.
fun.
It's a tough life. Right?
It's
tough.
fun.
Yeah.
It's been really cool. It's also really cool. The other amazing thing about this group is that we are now meeting other independent authors in Los Angeles. And instead of just, walking around in the dark or working in our voids,
Right.
what we do as authors. So having this collective group and also between Cody, Gaby, and myself, Gaby Lorino is the other of our triad. And we will share our talents with each other because I'm the graphic designer, but I'm not very good at copy editing. Cody's really great at editing, and Gaby's really good at copy editing. And so we just kind of share our talents, not only for the anthology, but amongst ourselves.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And it's really helpful.
Yeah, very soon, Gaby and Allison will receive the draft of my third novel, and I apologize in advance for that. But I'm also super grateful because when their opinion and input is really valuable.
Yeah, it's really cool to have other people that not only have been there, because you could send a book to somebody who doesn't really understand the nuances of self-publishing, but it's really helpful to be part of this collective.
Yeah, it's very true. It is. It really is. Like having a community makes all the difference.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And authors we're not privy to that. We're not, we like our little hidey holes.
Yeah, no, it's
for
not.
sure.
If anyone's out there teaching writing, like they don't tell you in the first day, like, hey, go find a group of other writers.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. That's never taught,
Yeah.
So
Well, I think it's also the case that the kind of discussion has been influenced heavily by traditional publishing and what they see as authors' roles. That's changed as well as the rise of indie authors. So, we're expected to do a lot more work around the writing,
Right.
Whereas that wasn't always the case. Which is great because then we as indie authors have control over that. We can decide who we want to work with. We don't have to take other people's bullshit if we don't want to.
Right. Right. I mean, it's a catch-22
Yeah.
because then you are doing it all yourself.
Yes.
yeah,
you know?
it's all on you, right?
All,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been fantastic, really.
Thanks
Yeah,
for
it was
having
great
us.
having you guys.
Thanks.
So that was the episode. This has been the Genre Hustle.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to The Genre Hustle. You can find us on our website, www.genrehustle.com, on Twitter @genrehustle, or on Instagram @genrehustle. Our podcast is available on all major streaming platforms, including YouTube. Be sure to like, subscribe, and send any feedback or suggestions our way. See you next time.